Hey guys, so I have another video for you, obviously. And this one is on virtual reality. My husband and I were watching TV, and this commercial came on for the new virtual reality headset. And it was actually really expensive. It was basically $700, and you just think, wow, that is just so much money to spend on a toy, basically. um and so I was just thinking, because you put this on and it's kind of like a pair of goggles, and then you have like these little hand set thingies or whatever, and it's this whole setup anyway. I was just thinking, like, what would the impacts on your brain be for something like that? Because I mean, it's right up against your eyes, and it's basically um kind of manipulating your mind, so to speak, to be in this whole other world. I mean, that is the entire point of these things. So yeah, so my question was just, hey, what's kind of the deal with this? Anyway, let's just kind of jump right in. And let's see. So, um, so let's see here. Negative impact of virtual reality on the brain. Uh, there's no scientific evidence, okay, that virtual reality can provoke constant brain damage to adults and children. However, there are some symptoms such as dizziness, depression, and collapse that appear while the VR experience, or during the experience. Okay, virtual reality can affect the brain's GPS cells and interfere with people's ability to find their way in the world. Other effects of VR on the brain include headache, nausea, discomfort, depression, and drowsiness. So over here, it says virtual reality is a technology that stimulates the user's physical presence in a virtual environment, while VR has many potential benefits, such enhancing education and training. Okay. It can also have some negative impacts on the brain and body. Some of the potential negative effects of VR include cyber sickness. This type of motion sickness that can cause nausea, dizziness, and disorientation. It can be triggered by the VR illusion, which makes the user's eyes focus on an objects perceived to be far away, when in actual fact they're projected a matter of millimeters away on display. Eye strain. Okay, this can affect the interaction between your brain and eyes, forcing the brain to process information differently. Many people report eye strain and discomfort caused by fatigued eye muscles after using a headset. Mental health issues. In recent years, medical research has found that virtual reality can induce symptoms of disassociation, while there's plentiful anecdotal evidence pointing toward cases of isolation, social anxiety, and addiction arising from sustained gameplay. Okay, physical health issues. Prolonged use of VR headsets can cause neck pain, back pain, and other physical discomforts. It says it is important to note that these negative effects are not universal and may vary depend on the individual and VR stimuli that they're exposed to. Of course, if they're experiencing any discomfort, then go see your doctor is what they're saying. Um, let's see. Virtual reality content can also affect your perception of reality. VR can be stored in the brain's memory center in ways that are strikingly similar to real world physical experiences. Experience on demand. And I mean, it's CNN, but nah, I guess we'll just read this anyway. Um, I mean, I think it's interesting that they phrase it in the way magical world. I'm sure that's not by accident. And maybe somebody might think I'm just being a little picky, but I mean, especially for CNN, I'm pretty sure that was picked on purpose. I mean, this really is about altering your reality. I guess you could maybe even kind of argue that other things can too, but I don't know. This seems to be very blatant. Anyway, a quick glance at the safety warnings for the major manufacturers in this space makes it clear playing VR without supervision and in a crowded space is risky business. While wearing the product's headset, you are blind to the world around you. Do not rely on the product's chaperone system for protection. And it says, I see more falling than anything else. An associate professor of research. And dun, 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 and all of this nonsense. Okay. And where was I? Okay. Um, it says you can trip and hit your head or break a limb and get seriously hurt. So someone needs to watch over you when you are using VR. That's mandatory. Now, that seems very odd to me. Um, it says that includes keeping pets, small children, and other obstacles like ceiling fans out of the area. Um, let's see. Facebook Oculus Rift includes an infographic with the product and has an online safety center with video explanations to illustrate the safety issues. Oh boy. Um, so motion sickness, we went over that. Um, let's see. All right, so just kind of it says it's not just the eyes that might be harmed. Listening to sound at high volumes can cause irreparable damage to your hearing. That's true. I mean, anytime you ever listen to headphones, I'm sure somebody or your parents told you not to have that very loud. Or if your children are wearing headphones and you can hear it, you're like, hey, turn that down. So that's kind of obvious. Over time, increasingly loud audio may start to sound normal, but it can actually be damaging to your hearing. Sony PlayStation ads suggesting that a user lower the volume if they can't hear people speaking around them while they're playing. Um, that's interesting. It says most devices also include a warning to see your doctor before use if you're pregnant, elderly, or have pre-existing conditions that may affect your virtual reality experience, such as vision abnormalities, psychiatric disorders, heart conditions, and other serious medical conditions. That's interesting. The warning includes implanted medical devices such as cardiac pacemakers, hearing aids, and defibrillators, as well as someone with epilepsy or a history of seizures and blackouts, for sure. Um, but manufacturers say some people can seize even without a history of blackouts, especially those younger than 20. So manufacturers suggest keeping an eye out for involuntary muscle twitches and loss of balance as a signal of potential problem. Daydream may also suggest avoiding play entirely if you're intoxicated, overly tired, or suffering from a cold, headache, upset stomach, or other sickness, because the experience of virtual reality might make you feel worse. And if that's not enough, Daydream View warns that sharing the device could spread contagious diseases and infections and even cause skin irritation. Children at most risk. Okay. Um, I'm not sure how to pronounce this person's name. Gotsis, I don't know, believes that families with younger children should be especially cautious with virtual reality, even if they purchase the game for teens or young adults. It's almost impossible to hold up something shiny in front of a young child and then say, no, you can't have this. So parents have to tell the older child that part of your responsibility is to take care of your younger siblings to help them understand they shouldn't use it. Well, then they shouldn't use it and the adults shouldn't be using it. Um, I mean, it's just that kind of goes without saying. If you are trying to model how you would like, not even so much as how you would like your child to behave, but how you find appropriate for your child to behave, or things that you want to keep your child innocent of, or, whatever the case may be, you obviously need to model that behavior for them. It's that's like eating sugar for breakfast and then telling your child, "Oh, sugar for breakfast is bad for you," or smoking, blah 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 blah. And it's not really going to hold up, right? Because they're going to be like, "Well, you're doing it, so why can't I do it?" Again, yes, there are things for adults and not for children, but generally speaking, adults put those things to the side when the children aren't around. So, yeah. Um, let's see. So it says if they do try it, the younger the child, the shorter the exposure should be. Well, this seems to have also somewhat of an addictive property, doesn't it? So do you really think that the child is going to like at the very least not throw a fit because they can't use it longer? Children may not know how to communicate discomfort of any sort, such as visual discomfort or motion sickness, so you don't want prolonged exposure on screen. Okay. Um, let's see. This particular doctor uses VRs himself and on subjects in his lab daily. Yet he has let his 6-year-old daughter use it only 4 times in her life, each time for a duration of only 5 minutes. Okay. Um, we read a lot of new studies in our work, but what we are seeing is a ton of studies on medical applications and not many with young children, and not really any with really young children. The research has been done primarily in young adults, so we don't really know what's going to happen to a young child. Um, so they're saying no one under 13. And let's see. So there's some that have um restrictions, some that don't really, like kind of sorta. Um, and then of course the content can also affect your perception of reality. So, as I read before, VR can be stored in the brain's memory center in ways that are strikingly similar to real world physical experiences. Dun, 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 experience on demand about his 2 decades of research on the psychological effects of virtual reality. When VR is done well, the brain believes it is real. That's great if the content is fun, educational. I don't like the inspirational. But anyway, for example, research shows that adults can be taught to recycle. Okay, yeah, anyway, yeah, do your own research on that. Anyway, increase their physical activity or become more empathetic to those of different races if they see themselves doing so virtually. Am I the only one that sees a problem with that? Like, you can't be okay with people unless you see it on a computer screen. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But if the content is scary or combative, some of today's popular VR games allow you to fight off bloody zombies, get a virtual tour of hell. Okay. Battle endless waves of combatants and kill as many as you can in survival horror. In one game, you can even shoot your. Okay. Mm, that's unhealthy. Okay, the health and safety page for Google's Daydream View says it straight out. If the content is frightening, violent, or anxiety provoking, it can cause your body to react physically, including increasing your heart rate and blood pressure. It can also, in some individuals, cause psychological reactions, including anxiety, fear, or even post traumatic stress disorder. All right, I'm just saying, if there really ever is a zombie apocalypse, I think maybe you want to save all of your anxiety for that point. Maybe you could argue you need practice, but I'm just saying, probably just save. There's going to be enough anxiety going on then. You just leave it alone. Anyway, if you were to do this in the real world, how would it affect you? Okay, that's the way to think about virtual reality. Adding that research shows becoming someone else in VR produces greater changes in real life attitudes and behavior than watching video or doing role playing. So don't think of VR as a media experience because the brain sees it as similar to an actual experience. If it's an activity that you're ethically not comfortable with in real life, don't do it. If you think of it that way, the guidelines on what you want to do in VR become very clear. Now, obviously, it's going to kind of go without saying the content for children. I mean, come on, guys. If we're not I understand that sometimes children can be sneaky, and sometimes those like the ads for games and things like that aren't what you or they expected, and I will just have my son delete games that have stuff like that. Um or he's not allowed to play or whatever. And he'll know. He'll come and tell me, "Hey, mom, look, this is inappropriate." And I'm like, "Okay, delete it." Um, and so it kind of just goes without saying that, children and content. But kind of as this is, it kind of goes with everything, right? Like, we want to watch out for what we're watching. We want to be careful of what we're doing too. And I mean, I used to be huge into zombie movies like The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, things like that. And I can't say, maybe in all honesty, that I would never want to watch a Resident Evil movie ever again. Um, but there are certain other shows like The Walking Dead I just quit watching um completely, and I really don't have any desire to watch any of them or their offshoots or whatever else, because they purposefully mess with people's emotions. And I just don't think that's cool. I mean, I get it. If something like that were to arise, it'd be horrible. But yeah, anyway, that's like a whole other that's a whole other thing. But I mean, if movies are bad enough and you wouldn't want to watch something in a movie, I honestly don't see any application for this whatsoever. I just really don't. Uh, there's no reason you need it for any educational purposes whatsoever. As far as I am personally concerned, I don't get it. I guess on the surface, I can kind of understand the draw to it, but I think if you're concerned about your health in any way, it's just one of those things. It seems good on the surface, but when you really kind of get down into it, nah, it's really not good stuff. Um, and so that was that. Um, and then I kind of worded it just a little bit differently. Negative impact of virtual reality headset on the brain. So damage to vision, disorientation, seizures, broken bones, torn ligaments, and electric shocks. Okay. Eye strain, eye discomfort, eye fatigue, and blurred vision. And over here, says the same thing. And let's see. What else does it say over here? Um, Okay, so and it's also suggested that the novelty of VR environments can overwhelm a child's brain, leading to a disruption in their default coordination strategy. Very interesting. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, people are like, yeah, it might be fun, but I don't know. Let's see here. Additionally, some users may experience motion sickness due to the mismatch between what they see and feel. The article also mentions that children can be especially vulnerable to the physical and physiological risks of VR. Yeah, I mean, just doesn't really sound worth it to me. Now, I went ahead and saw this article here. And let's just read that. It says, if you're looking for a truly immersive gaming experience that will allow you to leave the real world behind, virtual reality will allow you to do just that. These gaming applications can help you experience places and events that go far beyond our real world environment by allowing players to exist within a three-dimensional artificial world. The human brain can adapt quickly. When you're in the VR world, it can take as few as 30 minutes to lose your sense of spatial awareness in this one. Your brain may be able to quickly adapt to inhibiting the virtual world, but your body will still remain in this reality. So, will the walls you can walk into and slip, trip, and fall hazards and people you may punch in the face? As virtual reality continues to soar in popularity, so do cases where the use of VR results in injury. Let's see, gaming in the virtual reality world is not without its risks, and this article will explain why. Okay, so the risks. Users of virtual reality games have reported a host of troubling effects, including damage to their vision, disorientation, and even seizures. In addition to this, using VR carries a real risk of injury. Players have suffered from broken bones, torn ligaments, and even electric shocks. Augmented reality uses similar technology to virtual reality, but rather than making an entirely virtual world, it adds virtual elements to the world around us. You may assume, since you can still see where you're going while you're playing augmented reality games, but the truth is, many people have been injured. All right, so um, Pokemon Go. One, I want you guys to realize something, and I mean, it may seem laughable, but it really is based on demons. And on top of that, it's all about like what magical powers and stuff like that. I mean, really, all things that scripture tells us not to be involved in. And you think about this, this is called augmented reality or virtual reality. The point is that your brain, so your brain, I mean, as it already said, your brain really can't distinguish between what's real and what's not with this stuff. I mean, how many times have you watched a movie and gotten so lost in it? I mean, there will be times that I'll be watching a show or something and I will just be like, "Whoa, I kind of forgot for a few minutes that I was sitting on my couch," right? Um and so how many times do we kind of get lost in this stuff where your brain is just really not totally comprehending um what it is that you're doing. And I know some people might be able to argue, oh, well, all of this stuff didn't exist back then. So it's not talking about that. It's talking about if you're physically doing these things. Not really. You're still doing them, but you're doing them in your mind, right? Your brain is not comprehending that you're not physically doing these things, right? I mean, it's granted there's somewhat of a disconnect, but all in all, you are still participating in the demons. You are still participating in the magic practices. You are still participating in all of this demon stuff. Like you are. And again, I would argue that's why, if you've come to a certain point in your belief, would you sit down and watch a horror movie or any of those sorts of things and say you've come a long way in your belief? Because I would say, obviously, there was a time in my life where I claimed to be a huge believer and I would watch horror movies till the cows came home. Like, not that we had cows to come home, but you see what I'm saying. Anyway, it's like that. So you have to understand that just because you may see it as just a game, right? Okay, well, Harry Potter then is just a movie. Uh, but would you really want to entertain that? I don't think so. We shouldn't be. Anyway, we should not want to be entertaining that. So that's just kind of my point, and I want you guys to know exactly what that is all about. It's all about magic. It literally is about demons and all that other stuff that we're told not to mess with. So, not being judgmental, but that really is kind of something that believers should let go of. Uh so anyway, I mean, let's look at something just as simple as this. So this game is a popular augmented reality game that has already seen more than its share of injuries among its users. Take a look at the following examples to see the variety of ways these injuries can occur. A man who was playing while he was driving ran into a police car. I'm sure that was a fun ticket. A distracted man was robbed while he was playing. A distracted man was assaulted while he was playing. Two distracted men fell off a cliff when they were walking while playing. A man who was speeding while playing crashed his car. Now, I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, oh, well, they should have been paying attention and, probably call them a few names and things like that. But the point is like I said, when you get so immersed in certain things, whether it be a video game or a movie or whatever, your brain, for at least a few seconds to a few minutes, your reality is augmented. That's kind of why they call it augmented reality. So there is a disconnect between your brain and what you're physically doing. Now, all of a sudden, the two are not on the same page. One's doing one thing, the other's doing the other. And so, while it may be kind of a no duh to not go walk off a cliff or run into a police car or get robbed. And maybe you could get robbed no matter if you're not playing, okay? There's plenty of people who get robbed without playing. But the point is that it's literally augmenting your reality so that you will not think straight at all, and you're going to make all of these goof ups, and then not only are you going to hurt yourself, but you can hurt other people too. uh, what if a woman is walking her baby in a stroller and you drive right into her and the baby? Or I always think of, women in cars with their children or something. What if, right? I mean, think before you do and think about the what ifs. And it's kind of like, okay, if you wouldn't get into your car drunk, why would you get into your car playing an augmented reality game? Okay, if you wouldn't go for a walk near a cliff while you're intoxicated, why would you do that playing an augmented reality game? I mean, you kind of see where I'm going, right? And it says, according to one study in Tippecanoe County, India alone, or Indiana, I'm sorry, researchers attributed 134 car accidents that included 2 fatalities to the game. When they calculated what this could look like in relation to the United States as a whole, they estimated that the game could have been contributing to a factor in 150,000 accidents and 256 deaths. Okay, there have been many personal injury lawsuits filed against Nintendo over the injuries that resulted from playing, but manufacturers may not be the only potentially liable parties in these cases. Certainly, in cases like the examples above, to some extent, the liability rests with the player, right? In the case of virtual reality injuries, the player could be liable. For example, they fell while using the game, but they fell over a hazard in their own home. The manufacturer could also be liable for not adequately studying the physiological ramifications and long term side effects of using this technology. When you use virtual reality, you typically agree to terms that state that you understand and accept the potential risks for using the product. Not everyone who is injured as a result of VR has signed a waiver. However, as would be the case with someone who is hurt in an accident that someone who is using VR caused, you can visit the link. Okay, help if injured by the product. Okay. Anyway, again, I just really think people should think before they do. But again, I mean, people don't think before they get drunk either, and things like that stuff happens. So it's just, honestly, this doesn't seem too far off from alcohol. I mean, it lowers your inhibitions. It lowers your physical ability to do things around you or understand the world around you. It completely messes with your brain. Very interesting connections, honestly. Some factors that could affect liability in virtual reality injury cases include whether the injury occurred on private or public property and whether or not the design of the headset was a factor. It's also possible that an injury could be caused by a problem in the product's manufacturing or design. Um, it just says here, when it comes to virtual reality, warning labels alone may not be enough to keep players safe. It's important to use common sense whenever you're using VR, but it's also imperative that designers and manufacturers consider how their products are likely to be used and address any safety issues before they are released to the public. Um, Now, I just think there has to come a time when we have personal responsibility. Like again, like I've said many times already, that we think before we do, especially things like this and things that are literally meant to change the way your brain is functioning, basically. Um, so let me see something else. So I went ahead and just kind of typed it in another different way. So negative impact of virtual reality on brain function. Um, let's see. Okay, so this is just kind of going back to what we um already saw. But again, if brain damage is a possibility, that's kind of scary. Um, let's see. So this one was just talking about um all right, I don't know, let's see this. Okay. It's not gonna let me. Okay, so let me go back. Sometimes it doesn't always, you don't always get to um you don't always get these articles that you want to, because it has you accept all this, that, and the other thing that you don't even fully. Oh, see right here. Um, this again. So anyway, I do find it interesting that I do find it interesting that it causes um, these problems, these mental problems, and even causes depression. And I mean, I guess I could see that because um, what if you're in like this really cool world or whatever, and then you take it off and you're like, oh man, I'm in this mess now. But I don't know if that's exactly what they're talking about. I don't know. Um, let's see. Let me try to put it this way. Um, okay, so it just says symptoms of disassociation, isolation, social anxiety, addiction, and behavioral changes. Okay, that's pretty interesting. What do they say over here? Now, I don't know exactly what kind of huh. It says certain virtual reality content, like frightening characters, did lead to strong, persistent negative emotions. Okay. I mean, I could see that even after, sometimes even after watching something, you kind of like, it just sticks with you and it bothers you for a long time. I could see how in a world where it's basically real to your brain and not even just a TV show, how that could cause a lot of problems. Um, yeah, let's see. That one didn't really give me too much. So VR will enhance absorption into an experience, which will um, mediate an increase in the intensity of negative emotions that result from one's actions during the VR experience. Okay, so again, if you're having to do, and I think that's also another thing where it kind of differentiates from movies. I think sometimes if you're watching a movie, you can kind of get drawn into that character and maybe somewhat picture yourself uh, in that predicament or in that zone. Again, like zombie movies, right? Like you're coming up with a zombie plan and all this other stuff, right? Like it's kind of this whole thing, but but there is still um there's still distance, right, between you and that screen. I mean, so while you may get kind of lost in a movie or a character, what's going on, at the same time, your brain is still also picking up the things around you, right? Like you can still see your environment other than that TV, right? You can see your lap or the chair or whatever, right? You can you're still somewhat distanced from that. But when you're talking about virtual reality, where this literally takes up any and all visual availability, it is literally just just putting yourself right in there. And again, if it really is the case that your brain in that function, in that capacity, cannot really tell the difference between what's real and what's not, again, that's why they call it a virtual reality. Okay, it might be on a screen, but your brain is interpreting it as reality. Um, so yeah, I guess I don't really have too much more to say on that. Um, I just found this very, very interesting, and it was just something that I had been thinking about. Um, take it or leave it. It's obviously your choice, your decision. I'm not telling anyone what to do, per se. My personal advice, I wouldn't do it. Um, but again, too, content, but again, if it is causing eye strain, it's kind of we do put enough strain on ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally. We kind of do all of that anyway. Uh, so I feel like adding to it might not be extremely helpful. Just my opinion. Again, I'm not telling anybody what to do, what not to do. It's none of my business. But I'm just putting it out there that maybe it's not such a smart idea. That's all. Anyway, yeah, so that's it. That's all I got for now. And have a good day, guys. And we will talk to you later. Bye, guys.